Secretary General, dear Jens, it's so nice to welcome you back to Berlin, to the Chancellery. Top of our agenda was the summit. NATO is gathering in Vilnius in 3 weeks' time. We're going to deal and discuss with dealing with the war of aggression in Ukraine and its consequences. At the Madrid summit 1 year ago, we agreed on a range of steps in order to bolster and strengthen the alliance. NATO is a defense alliance. Germany has done a lot in order to increase the alliance's defense capability. We're all united in our resolve to defend every square inch of NATO territory. Last week, the federal government adopted its national security strategy. For the first time in our history, we have such a strategy. It stipulates very clearly that the defense of our country and the defense of our alliance have absolute priority for the Bundeswehr. With the special fund to the tune of 100 billion, we have passed important investments in order to modernize our capabilities and enhance these. And we are going to spend 2% of our GDP annually on defense. NATO is and remains the central and pivotal guarantor of our collective security. We are going to reliably make available a major part of the Bundeswehr for the defense of the alliance. Already, Germany is very engaged when it comes to the protection of our alliance in Central and Eastern Europe. In Lithuania, for a long time, we've been leading a multinational battle group, and with our Eurofighters and Patriot systems, we're protecting Poland, and we're participating in air policing in the Baltics. In addition, we keep almost 17,000 soldiers ready for the NATO response force in order to quickly lend assistance to threatened allies. Our focus on the defense of the country and the alliance also means that we exercise intensively together with our allies. Right now, we have the exercise Air Defender, the largest exercise of air forces in German skies in decades. This past Friday, I gained a first-hand impression of the state of cooperation among allies. In Jaga, I saw just how well 25 nations are cooperating in this exercise. In Europe, we need to invest in air defense. With the European Sky Shield Initiative, we gather the states of Europe in order to increase together the protection against ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. We should be prepared that the Russian war of aggression may take a long time. We're preparing for that, and we're adapting our policies accordingly. Germany is going to support Ukraine as long as it is necessary. We have earmarked the necessary funding in our budget, and we are engaged and are committed to the fact that the German industry enhances its capacities for production and the repair and maintenance of armaments. It is clear NATO will not become a party to the war. Ladies and gentlemen, NATO is a strong alliance. Last year, Finland and Sweden decided to join NATO, and those countries are a welcome and an important addition to our alliance. It is important to me that both countries will be gathered as allies in Vilnius together with us. The Secretary General and myself also talked about the security of critical infrastructure, especially in the North Sea. Jens, I want to thank you for your commitment that NATO is going to take over a coordinating role. Sabotage of gas pipelines, but also submarine cables and wind power plants affect the security of all of the alliance. It is not a matter pertaining to just single allies. We tackle these tasks together within the alliance, and I'm grateful for the good cooperation within NATO, which you, Jens, represent like no other. Thank you.
Chancellor Scholz, dear Olaf, thank you so much for hosting me here in Berlin, and also thank you so much for your leadership and for your personal commitment to NATO, to the transatlantic alliance. We face the most challenging security environment in a generation. Last year, President Putin sent hundreds of thousands of troops into Ukraine, causing death and destruction. Ukraine has the right to liberate its own land, and a counteroffensive is now underway. The more land the Ukrainians are able to liberate, the stronger their hand will eventually be at the negotiating table. We all want this war to end, but a just peace cannot mean freezing the conflict and accepting a deal dictated by Russia. NATO is, as you said, no party to the conflict. We stand by Ukraine in its right to self-defense, enshrined in the UN Charter. And I commend Germany for its leading role in providing military, financial and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And the recent decision to deliver another 64 Patriot missiles to Ukraine. This will save lives. Today, we also discussed our long-term support. The Vilnius summit in July will set out a vision for Ukraine's future as an independent, democratic member of the Euro-Atlantic family. At the summit, allies will address Ukraine's membership aspirations. Allies are working on a multi-year package of assistance for Ukraine. We are also working to establish a new NATO-Ukraine Council to jointly consult on security issues of mutual concern. The decisions we will take in Vilnius will bring Ukraine closer to NATO. We also addressed bolstering NATO's deterrence and defence. This will be high on the agenda of our summit. We are now putting in place new regional plans with assigned forces and capabilities and high level of readiness. Germany will play a major part of this. You have already allocated thousands of troops to NATO, including through your leadership of our multinational battle group in Lithuania. I welcome Germany's first ever national security strategy, which confirms your strong commitment to NATO. I'm also thankful for Germany's leadership in establishing a new NATO maritime centre for the security of critical undersea infrastructure. This will increase our situational awareness and enhance our maritime presence. Tomorrow I will attend exercise Air Defender, the biggest air exercise in NATO's history. This is another demonstration of Germany's capabilities and commitment, and sends a clear message that NATO remains ready to defend every inch of Allied territory. To keep our people safe, we must continue to invest in our security. At the NATO summit in Vilnius, we will agree on a more ambitious defence investment pledge, with 2% of GDP as a floor, not a ceiling. And I strongly welcome Germany's historic commitment to reach 2% in 2024. We also discussed the situation in Kosovo. NATO's commitment to our United Nations mandate is unwavering. Our forces, the KFOR, will continue to take all necessary measures to ensure a safe and secure environment and freedom of movement for all communities in Kosovo. We call on all parties to stop any further escalatory steps and to return immediately to the dialogue facilitated by the European Union. So, Chancellor Scholz, dear Olaf, thank you again for Germany's leadership in this critical time. Thank you.
Thank
you very much, Secretary General. Ukraine expects of the summit in Vilnius a formal invitation to NATO to join NATO. Would you say that after the defense ministers meeting this past week, such an invitation is off the table finally, and that we're just talking about pledges below this threshold? And Federal Chancellor, you mentioned time and again the decisions, declaration of Bucharest in 2008, when Ukraine was given a perspective for accession. Could you think that there is a formulation beyond, a wording beyond Bucharest in Vilnius?
At the Vilnius summit and in the preparations for the summit, we are not discussing to issue a formal invitation. What we are discussing is how to move Ukraine closer to NATO, and there are ongoing consultations, and I'm not in a position to preempt the outcome of those consultations. But what I can say is that allies actually already agree on a lot. We agree on that NATO's door is open. We have demonstrated that with the invitation of Finland and Sweden. We also agree on what we stated in 2008, that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. We also agree that it's not for Russia, but for Ukraine and NATO allies to decide when the time is right to invite Ukraine. Russia doesn't have a veto over NATO decisions. But most importantly, we all agree that the most urgent and important task now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe. Because unless we do that, unless Ukraine prevails, there is no issue to be discussed at all related to membership. So therefore, I'm absolutely confident that at the Vilnius summit, allies will reiterate their strong support to Ukraine and the need to, both bilaterally but also through multilateral institutions, provide support to Ukraine for as long as it takes.
I don't have much to add. We have the Bucharest decision. The Bucharest decision remains, and we need to focus on the task at hand. We need to support Ukraine to defend its country, its integrity and sovereignty. Next question, please. Federal Chancellor, you stipulated this within the national security strategy. You mentioned the 2% goal of NATO. Now there are demands by Estonia, the ally, to increase the objective, to increase it to 2.5 and to make it the floor and not the ceiling. Do you agree, the federal government? Does the federal government agree? The defense budget is not supposed to increase that much next year. And Secretary General, on the 2% goal in the national security strategy, which you commended right now, it reads that Germany wants to achieve this in a multi-annual average, meaning that it would be okay if it would be below 2% for 1 year or another. Is that enough for you, and as from a NATO perspective? Thank you very much for these questions. We took all the necessary preparations for us to reach the 2% goal. We do this with the federal budget, but also by using the special fund that was conceived to actually be able to spend 2%. And in the law, passing this special fund, you see the funding available, and you could actually spend 1 year spend more than others, but our outlook is 2%. Our perspective is 2%. I assume once all countries in Europe have achieved this and all members in the transatlantic alliance, this will lead to a tremendous increase in our defense capabilities. I mean, it's a massive increase in defense spending. And if you look at all the many other countries and factor this in, countries that also need to increase their spending for them to reach the 2% objective, then if you add all of this up, this will result in a massive increase of defense capabilities for NATO.
First of all, I would like to welcome the very strong commitment of Germany to reach 2%, and not only the commitment, but actually the fact that we have seen German defense spending going up significantly, and also, of course, by the special fund of 100 billion euros. And the whole message from the Zeitenwende has really sent a very clear message about further increases and the strength and commitment of Germany to contribute to our shared security, to our collective defense in NATO, and that's something I welcome. And we have seen that commitment not only in words but also in deeds, because Germany has taken important decisions to acquire new modern capabilities, including fighter jets more air defenses and many other types of defense capabilities, which are important for Germany, but also for the whole of NATO. The need to reach 2% reflects the fact that we live in a more dangerous world. And again, it will be for the leaders when they meet in Vilnius to decide the exact language. But I have argued in favor of regarding 2% as a minimum, because when you look at the capability targets, the capabilities we need to strengthen our collective defense in the way we have agreed, for many countries it will require actually more than 2%. Then, of course, the reality is that when you have a 2% guideline, there will always be fluctuations in GDP. So suddenly you have a pandemic and GDP goes down, and then you may have a very high percentage. So these kind of fluctuations will always be the case, but there is a big difference fluctuating around 1% or 1.5% and fluctuating around 2%. So the most important thing is that we have a significant increase in defense spending, and that we meet the capability targets which we agree which we have agreed in NATO. Let me add one brief thing, and that is that from my own experience as a politician, in Minister of Finance and Prime Minister, I know that it's never easy to increase defense spending, because if you spend more on defense, there's something less. There is less for healthcare, for education, for other important things. But the reality is that when we live in a more dangerous world, we just have to pay the price of investing more in defense, because without peace and security, all the other things we are striving for, climate change, prosperity, will not be able to address them if we don't ensure peace and security.
Secretary General, I would like to ask a question pertaining to your own future. Could you say whether you would be available for an extension of your term in office? There are more and more governments proposing this, so that you would remain in office until April of next year, because people have not agreed on a successor, male or female. And Federal Chancellor, a question pertaining to another topic, Intel. The company Intel has made tremendous investments in Israel, 25 billion Poland and 5 billion in Israel and Poland. Is the government going to pay 10 billion in subsidies so that Intel will establish a business location in Magdeburg?
I have nothing new to say about this. I have no intention of seeking extension of my term. My only plan is to be focused on my task as Secretary General and do my job here until my tenure ends this fall, and I have really no other plans.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this question. As you know, I'm going to meet representatives of Intel today. It was publicly announced, and I will answer your questions at a different press conference. Federal Chancellor, you talked about the priority of country defense. You reiterated this. Shouldn't this be reflected in the regular defense budget? You're in the final phase of budget deliberations. Are we going to see a higher defense budget? And Secretary General, you talked about the 2%, which are not the bottom, not the ceiling. Don't you see a contradiction, a clear contradiction with regard to the security strategy, which is talking about a multi-annual average that keeps the back door open to less and not strives to have more than 2% like you? Thank you very much for your question. Let me reiterate, we have proposed an ambitious enhancement of our defense effort, and we assume that with the funding from the budget and the funds that we have from the special fund, that we will be able to achieve the 2% threshold. If you don't insist on copyright, I will reiterate what the Secretary General just said. I will take it over 100%, and I will ask the press secretary to say that it was my statement and not the Secretary General's.
You can take that, no problem. First of all, the thing is that the national security strategy is a very important document, and I welcome that, and it expresses and formulates a very strong commitment of Germany to our collective defence, to our transatlantic bond, to NATO, and also the need to invest more in defence. And as I said, if you look at Europe on average, the fluctuations have been around 1.5% more or less. And of course, if the fluctuations then ends up around 2%, we are in a very different world, which will be a huge improvement. Second, when I refer to 2% as a minimum, that reflects the reality that when you look on the NATO capability targets, the forces we agreed to have on higher readiness, and the force structure we need to actually deliver on strengthening our collective defence, then for many allies, depending on how much they have invested in the past, where they are, this will necessarily mean more than 2% and also fluctuations on levels above 2%. But with uncertainties related to GDP, there will always be fluctuations.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our press conference. Thank you so much.